Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Retro Monster Truck Review. My name is Josh Rhodes, your host with the most here on the show. I'm going to be talking Memphis 1991 this week with Coty Saucier, special co-host, having him on the show. But I want to start out beforehand and say thank you again to everybody for those Apple iTunes 5-star reviews, as well as the follows on Spotify, the subscriptions to YouTube, the likes, and the comments on YouTube as well. Want to throw this out real quick, too. There's only 6 days left that you can get your merchandise for the Retro Monster Truck Review over at bonfire.com/RetroMTReview. If you're looking for a t-shirt or a hoodie, there's only 6 days left to get it. It's a very limited edition run. We've also signed our first sponsor here on the Retro Monster Truck Review, and that, of course, is JBScaleGraphics.com. John over at JB Scale Graphics has been a partner of mine, a sponsor of mine for a number of years here in the RC world. John provides all the custom flags that see fly on the back of my trucks, as well as many trucks out there on the RC Monster Truck circuit. He has officially licensed Overkill, Bigfoot, Obsessed, Bad Habit. There's an autism awareness wrap, and as of course I said earlier, custom flags are available as well through JB Scale Graphics. Thanks once again to JB Scale Graphics for sponsoring this podcast. Now, let's get into Memphis 1991 with Coty Saucier here on the Retro Monster Truck Review. Hello again, everybody. This is another edition of the Retro Monster Truck Review. Special guest this time around, though, is Coty Saucier, driver of Monster Energy, and just an all-around good guy. Leaned on Coty here a little while back when we did the World Finals 9 episode for just some information behind the scenes, because like I'd said, there was just nothing out there really behind the scenes as far as that went. They did all the interviews during the day, and they never went to the back. But, man, it's good to have you here on the show, dude. And we're going to talk Memphis 1991.
Sounds good, man. This is a really cool idea you have, and kudos to you for getting this going and doing such a good job with it. So I'm looking forward to for this one in particular.
I wonder why. All right, man. This is the lineup that we have here at this show is the one that really it just stands out to just any monster truck fan as soon as you see it. We've got Barefoot and Fred Schaefer, the debut of Snakebite and Colt Cobra, who's also Gene Patterson, for those that don't know. Biggest spoiler in monster truck racing right there.
Nope.
Bigfoot and Andy Brass, King Crunch, Scott Stevens, No Problem and John Moore, Equalizer with Greg Holbrook, Wild Thing and Jim Booker, Taurus with Jack Willman Jr. behind the wheel, Nightlife with Wayne Smozanik shortly after he bought the truck, USA 1 and Steve Wilkie, Carolina Crusher with Gary Porter, and Scott Hess and Nightmare, just to name a few of the trucks that were here at this event. And like I said, that's a star-studded lineup in 1991.
Absolutely. And the thing that I love about this, man, it's the early days of PENDA, but you look at the lineup, you look at the trucks, and you look at the drivers' names as well. It's so diverse as far as the drivers and the trucks. I guess you could say the caliber or the mechanical caliber of the trucks. You got arena trucks from, Pace SRO. You got TNT leaf sprung trucks. Now you've got, the early PENDA trucks that are, what are there, 3 in the lineup that are state of the art at that time, the being Barefoot, Bigfoot, and the Taurus truck.
Well, you can throw Carolina Crusher in that mix as well.
Absolutely. You can't leave Porter out. Absolutely. You're very right. And, there's still some hard chargers. Everett still has his big motor thing trying to do work. And it's just so diverse with the group of trucks. Scott Hess. I consider him an arena truck back then. And, you've got all this combined, and it was entertaining.
Oh, yeah, it was extremely entertaining. And what they really billed this as locally, if I remember correctly, was the battle of the big three with Bigfoot, Barefoot, and Taurus, USA versus USHRA versus TNT. But what they don't tell you is the fact that you've got the 3 TNT champions in this lineup with USA 1, Equalizer, and Bigfoot. You've got the I can't even say it, USHRA SRO Pace truck with Barefoot in the lineup. And you've got the USA truck over there. You've got perennial favorite Gary Porter. I mean, it's a giant mix, like you said. Yes, and I really love this lineup for that fact.
Absolutely. Well said. Yeah. I didn't even think of Fred Schaefer as a USHRA guy, but yeah, you're very right. And man, it didn't take him. I don't think this particular chassis of his, did it have much existence? I don't think it had a very long life, did it?
I don't think it did either. I know that I believe the truck that he won the USHRA title in 19, I think it was 1990 with, was the leaf sprung truck with the bald tires.
Correct. It's super lightweight thing. Yep. And then he made this, and then yeah,
And this truck
to,
was more known for just skying it out like he does in
oh
qualifying
man,
here.
it flew so weird. And, you know, Tom's trucks still do that to this day, and I know it was a very similar setup, even way back then. They fly nose high. It's so weird to watch them jump.
Yeah, it's weird to watch them jump, but man, when they settle, it's like a pillow sometimes. It's
I
just
know it.
it's so hard to believe. But
Not a
Taurus,
tire bounce
Barefoot
to
would
be
jump and
found.
land on all fours really well. Taurus would always want to kick over and push that left front tire into the ground. The foot trucks seemed to always want to go nose high. But man, when they landed in no man's land, they were on it to the cars.
They were, and you know, in the early days of this style racing, it was such a diverse setup with guys playing with chassis. You know, Scott Stevens always played with something, and to me, it always looked like his truck just kind of pushed itself around. And was it too much motor or not enough chassis engineering? I don't know what it was, but even Bigfoot 8 for then, and it's seen here a lot in this race. It never looked like it was in control.
No, I don't think anybody was in control of this
I don't
race.
think so.
This track was treacherous for these boys.
Yeah, yeah.
This one I've always considered, at least on my event radar, as one of the crown jewels in monster truck racing. I have incredibly fond memories of watching this one. I remember being a very small kid going into the living room and my late stepfather looking at me and telling me, "Hey, monster trucks are on twice today," and it was both day one and day two. I remember day one aired in the early afternoon, and day two aired late in the evening on like basically prime time on TNT,
Yep.
and or excuse me, TNN. And man, I remember that to this day because that's a special memory that I shared with him. And it was the first time I think I ever saw a monster truck roll over as well, and that's of course in day two with Gary Porter. But I mean, you've got just this like incredible lineup with these guys, and we get to it here. And the broadcast opens up with, of course, one of the perennial monster truck favorite announcers, Gary Lee, welcoming us to the show. And I love his few puns here, saying, "A town where the king is revered." Of course, they lead into a shot of Bigfoot right here. I love that little fade in with Bigfoot.
Yep. Yep. And then they go on to say, you know, Battle of the Blues later on in the broadcast with,
Yep.
you know, Scott Stevens, the King Crunch, and Andy with Bigfoot. It's just cool. They always had little quirks like that. Leave it to Gary to come up with that kind of thing.
Leave it to Gary and his broadcast partner. Of course, we both know Army Armstrong is probably the best voice in monster truck history. Everybody
Oh yeah.
really knows Army when it comes to the early 90s and late 90s, mid 90s monster truck racing, just for his Armyisms that he would have. He's got quite a few of them in this show as well.
Yeah, you know, Army was a good commentator as well as being super knowledgeable. You know, he's a gearhead. So he was always Johnny on the spot. I believe this is wrong, and 99% of the time he was right. Or you know what, this is what you're going to look for. 99% of the time he was right.
Yeah, and one of my favorite things that he says in this show is, "Gary, it's almost like a zoo when you were a kid." Excuse me, Gary, it's almost like when you were a kid at the zoo looking at all these trucks out here, because there's so much different things going on. We got a truck that looks like a snake sitting over there in the corner. Everything that he said is just spot on about this event. One cool thing that I liked about this was the event format, the original PENDA format. We had 12 trucks in the field. 10 trucks were invited to compete, and then there were 2 open qualifiers, and it's open only to MTRA members. And then the fastest second round time would go straight to the final, which was an interesting concept.
Definitely. And did the Hall brothers qualify, did they? Or
yes, they qualified for day 2 with Big Boss.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Big Boss.
It's funny, too. When it goes into day 2, they say Tim Hall is driving, but they show an old photo of Mark Hall with the old 80s rock star haircut.
I'll never forget that. I remember meeting him when I was a kid, probably not long after this was probably taped. I know I went to Monster Wars in Baton Rouge at the Centralplex, and it was the black and white Executioner body. Man, that was probably like 92 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember meeting Mark then, and he had super big hair going on even back then. So good memory.
Oh, yeah. And when you look at him now, it's just such a contrast to what he was back in the day. I talked to Mark last summer, and he's just one of the nicest, down-to-earth guys that you could ever meet, period. But when you look at his photo back in the day, you're like, man, is that the lead guitarist from Motley Crue?
Can't take these guys serious. But, yeah, their operation nowadays is second to none.
Oh, it's
Those guys are awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, they got a pretty good crew guy over there with Cheech too. But anyway, don't tell Cheech I gave him a shout
Yeah.
out. Let's see. Gary believes the story of the event of this event is going to be the track itself, and he's not wrong here, Cody. I mean, this
Yeah.
track is extremely treacherous, both day one and day two. Day one mainly for the starting line. It seems like these guys are just getting a ton of air off of the start, especially with Fred Schaefer and Barefoot a little bit later on. But the first half of the track, they kind of say is normal, but then you look at the first round, and you're like, yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah. 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 It's the first of, not necessarily the very first, but these guys are fairly new to running this length of course.
Yes,
This
exactly.
spread cars like this. So everybody is running different planetary. They got so much different drivetrain setups in the field here, different transmission setups. These guys are used to being indoors. The gearing selection, man, is where it comes into play. You can really notice it in some of the later rounds when you can finally tell they got a little bit figured out. And some of the guys like Jackie there, you could tell he clicks it into high gear, third gear. Those guys are probably running 400s then. You could tell when they click third, they just bomb it over that last jump, and
Oh yeah.
it's so cool looking. And then Fred, when his stuff was on point too with the air shifter, that thing always motored on pretty hard. So
Oh yeah, he had a little advantage on
everybody's
these guys with that Linko that he had.
yes. So everybody right here, day one, the first few rounds, everybody's trying to figure out what are we even doing here. So it's
Yeah,
very interesting.
and speaking of what are we even doing here, Snakebite's qualifying pass is interesting because the truck has a bad bounce after the second set of cars and loses both left side tires on the truck.
Yeah.
They both go completely flat. So when you see the truck come back out later, it's got two white rims on one side and it's got the two red rims for the Snakebite on the other side. It's an interesting contrast, but I did find it kind of funny. It looks like it has three Firestones on there, but the only tire they could get to replace, I believe it was the left rear, was a Goodyear. So
I
that's
saw it
two
has a
different tire strategies right there, kind of thing going on.
yeah, one big full cleat Goodyear right in front. I always kind of wondered why they did that. So I guess maybe they just had to make do with what they had, or
Yeah, I
maybe they
think
had a
that's what it
locker in the.
was. They may have not brought enough spare tires with them. That could have been from another team as well. They got another tire
I'm
from the team
sure.
and put it on one of their rims.
I'm sure. Yeah. So yeah, if each round is a money round, then yeah, by all means, get it back out there.
We also see that Bigfoot has some problems as well. Andy Brass is shown working on the drive shaft in Bigfoot 8, and it's questionable if they can make round one. They end up making it, but they don't make a qualifying pass. So Bigfoot's seated at the bottom of the field here, below even the open qualifiers. We got Barefoot at number
Yeah,
one.
part of me probably wants to.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say with the breakage with Brass, I would be willing to put money. It was on just trying to figure the track out. I guarantee he's landing on the throttle or something like that. It's tearing the drivetrain out of the trucks. And I know Porter. We'll cover it coming up. I believe he has a similar issue.
Yeah, yeah. We got Barefoot at number one qualifier. Absolutely no surprise there with Fred Schaefer. He's going to take on number 7, King Crunch. Then we've got Snakebite at number 5 as an open qualifier, taking on number 11, No Problem. Number 3, Equalizer, the 1989 TNT Points champion, taking on number 9, Wild Thing, as an open qualifier with Jim Booker. Then we have number 4, Taurus, Jackie Willman Jr. behind the wheel, taking on number 10, Nightlife. Number 6, USA 1 versus number 12, Bigfoot. And then number 2, Carolina Crusher, going to be taking on Nightmare. That's a good racing opening bracket, opening round for these guys right here. The one that I circled, though, that I really circled when I looked at this was Barefoot and King Crunch right off the bat.
Yeah, right off the bat, round one. Yeah, two guys that have been in the industry since the very start, and here they are again at another turning point of the industry. So definitely, guys that have two totally different chassis setups, and they're going for blood.
Yeah, and one thing that was interesting about Stevens' truck to me is yes, it was still technically considered a stage 2 truck, but it had some of the loosest suspension of a stage 2 that I think you could really ever see on a truck. His tires just seemed to always want to do that kind of motion all over the place, and the truck seemed to land and settle very well for being a stage 2 truck. That's why I kind of circled that matchup. I know Fred's got a big advantage suspension wise, but Stevens got a few tricks up his sleeve as well.
Yeah, you could tell it's a lightweight chassis. There's, fiberglass is just held on probably with just a couple zap screws or something. It's such minimal chassis, and I believe it was cantilever front and rear, which made it so loosey goosey looking. And that's part of the reason why I want to believe why the suspension kind of pushed the steering around and vice versa. So it was always that thing had to be a handful to drive and to maintain as well with the wrenches.
Yeah, and we'd see that in later years with this particular truck. But right here, though, I mean, you're taking on Fred Schaefer and Barefoot, and one of Fred's newer trucks at the time. This is, of course, the Chevrolet Barefoot Racer. And it could be argued that at this point, it's the #1 Chevrolet truck in the country. USA 1, of course, in the late 80s, everybody would probably have considered the #1 Chevrolet truck in the country. But, man, at this point, with all of this high-tech stuff that Fred Schaefer's trying out underneath the truck, the fact that it's the #1 qualifier here and USA 1 is well down the field, I mean, it's kind of hard to argue that point.
Oh yeah, I mean, this guy, he's bringing this piece of equipment out that nobody's seen before, and right off the bat, man, it just works. It launches, and it's just he's got.
Man, it doesn't just launch.
Got something to work with.
He lands halfway in the middle of no man's land in this race.
Yeah, not sure if that's what you want to do. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. I don't know, but it's definitely he's got something to work with from here on out.
Oh yeah. He goes out there. He defeats Scott Stevens right here. But like I said, he lands in the middle of no man's land after the start. He launches that first set of cars, gets over the second set of cars just fine, getting a lot of air out there. Fred even says that he's getting a lot of air. Feels like he's getting a lot of air out there. He might change the gearing between rounds, which I think is a good idea after watching that pass. Because one thing that I will point out, and this race kind of sticks out to me for that, is the fact that, like you were saying, these guys are still trying things out here. They're not necessarily going to back off if they don't feel something is working right. They want to get these trucks and test them and run them as hard as they possibly can at this point. And this seems like a bonsai pass for Fred.
Yeah, very well said. Yeah, he probably just kind of said, okay, let's go with this. And you could tell it had a bit of a gear in it. Maybe it was just his shift points were not quite where they should have been, but proven that he's got plenty of motor and plenty of chassis set up to get down the track. It just needs to be really fine-tuned. And as well as, it's not just the trucks and drivers. The track builders are all new to this too. So yeah, it's everybody's trying to put their input in and make it better.
Yeah, number 3 going to be taking on number 9 here. Of course, Equalizer and Wild Thing, 1989 points champion Equalizer. Man, last time I talked about this truck was when Greg Holbrook won at Texas Stadium. And that was one of the coolest events ever with that 3-lane straight line drag racing that they had in there.
Love it, man. Yeah, the 3-line drag with I know Mike Wine Porter. What's the gentleman? I believe he's passed on now with the Master Disaster. Yeah, man, that thing had a trans brake in it. It would leave like a drag car. It was so sweet.
Oh yeah, the truck was launching wheel stands off the line. It was so cool to watch. And you pointing out whenever they would shift into third gear made me think of that event, because that is exactly what he does at one point in there with Doug Spanier and Master Disaster. He shifts to third gear at the beginning of one of the jumps. The truck jumps, lands middle of the cars, and just has this crazy wild dance all the way to the hay bales. Almost runs into a camera guy at the end of the track. I mean, that was a dangerous event altogether, but that single pass right there really put Master Disaster on the map, and it's one of those iconic shots that kept getting played over and over and over again. But right here, though, we got the winner from day 2 at that particular event, Greg Holbrook, Equalizer. Actually, I believe I take that back. It's David Morris here, if I remember right.
No, I believe it's Holbrook.
No, you're right. It's Holbrook. Yeah, I looked at it wrong. I even read it off earlier and messed it up. Anyway, hey, blooper reel.
Indeed. All good, but yeah, you can't count that guy out, man. Him or the truck. I don't think we really mentioned it, when we went over the lineup here at the beginning of the podcast here. But the Equalizer truck, that thing, Gary Cook
truck worked
always had big power doing the pulling truck stuff. So he's putting it in monster truck stuff, and it looks, not to bash it, but man, that truck always looked so hokey. But pardon my French, it hauled ass.
Oh yeah, frankly, it worked. I mean, there was just nothing else you could say. We did the PENDA race from 1992 in Columbus, and the beginning of that second show is Army Armstrong talking about that truck and how they basically designed it with a pencil and paper. And he goes out and he beats Bigfoot at that event. And eventually, he goes on to win the event over Dennis Anderson and Gravedigger in the finals. Granted, Dennis did have a tire issue. Still, I believe that was Morris. Morris goes out and wins the event. This truck also won the 1989 points championship in TNT. It had no slouch here. And the reason that we're talking about Equalizer so much is the fact that it gets upset right here by Wild Thing out of the complete blue, because the truck breaks in the rear, breaks the rear end, And it's caused because of those ramps that we've been talking about. That giant sky launch that Equalizer had was probably the second highest in this event, right after the round beforehand with Fred. And he comes down, he lands, and you can just see that as soon as it lands, there's something wrong, and he has to get out of the throttle.
Yeah, there's definitely something wrong, but you can just tell, even in that half of a pass that he made, how much of a driver Holbrook is. You could see when he jumps, you could hear the throttle, you could see the steering input to try to correct, and he's planning ahead. You could just tell that kid, man, was a driver.
He knew exactly what he was doing out there.
Yes, yep. The truck just happened to unfortunately have a break, and Wild Thing motored by him. I don't know who was the driver of Wild Thing here. I'm not familiar with it.
Jim Booker was the owner of it, and I actually texted Lonnie Childress as I was watching the show, and I asked him when they actually purchased the Wild Thing truck, because this would go on to be Missouri Wild Thing. And Lonnie said it was really shortly after this event that they bought that truck. So Jim didn't have it very long, but when he did have it, heck, he scored a pretty good upset over here of one of the top trucks in the country.
For sure, had to be happy with that, but it's just unfortunate that they had that breakage. But knowing Holbrook and Gary Cook, they can get anything fixed.
Yeah, definitely, they can get anything and everything fixed. Yeah. Especially the rollover from Richmond comes to mind, and how they showed up the next day and still won, I believe, the semifinals.
Yeah.
That crew knew what they were doing to get things done. This, unfortunately, I believe, puts them out for the entire weekend, though. They don't come back for day 2. Which is a little surprising, but at the same time, when you look at the rear end of that truck, you kind of understand why.
I believe you're right. I believe it caused a bunch of motor issues. You can hear the motor go up in RPM, and it sounded like it may have dislocated, the input shaft to the crank. Who knows? But yeah, it sounds like it was pretty extensive for them not to be able to come back.
Number 4, Taurus, going to be taking on Nightlife here. Gary Lee pronounces Wayne's last name correctly as Wayne Smozanic. However, the production staff didn't seem to get the memo, as they spell his name Wayne Smozaniel. I don't know how they can get that one wrong whenever they've literally got the announcer in their ear as they're typing this stuff out and putting it on the broadcast. But Nightlife, as we've said, was recently purchased by Wayne here. And if I remember correctly, and I could be wrong, nobody shoot me in the comments, but I think this might have been his first event with the truck.
It's possible.
Because I know a little bit later in Bloomsburg, he's going to have a lot of problems with it.
He does. And, Smozanic and I, we share the same problem. We got a very complicated pronunciation of our last name. So I'm sure that guy's been called everything but early for dinner. So I feel his pain.
Oh, yeah. Jackie Woman Jr. is going to be in the left lane right here. And that's given us some wild passes. But honestly, Taurus seems pretty smooth right here. He's had a chance to kind of sit back and watch those guys, too. And he knows he's not necessarily taking on one of the top trucks right here. No offense to Wayne. Nightlife is a very consistent truck. But when you're taking on Taurus in the other lane, that is one of these brand new trucks on the circuit, lightweight, I'm going to guess 9,500 pounds or so.
Yeah.
He doesn't really have to push it as hard, and that's exactly what happens here. And after the run, Jackie actually points out he ran that entire run in second gear. He hadn't shifted to third yet, so you didn't see all of Taurus on that pass.
Not at all. I don't even think he needed to, for the length of the track and his opponent and just what the conditions, everything combined. He was just barely stretching the legs on that thing. And power to weight, that thing had to have been the truck to beat that weekend. That thing was super light, super powerful, super fast,
light, super fast, super
3-speed, good driver. They had it. If I had to pick a winner at the very beginning of the night, just by looking at the lineup, and then put him at the top of my list.
One thing that I found interesting here was the way that the truck launched and landed. Like we were talking about earlier, it seems like the Taurus trucks and later on the Max D trucks would always seem to want to land on that left front or that right front, depending on which way it goes. And Army says something here that jumped out at me. And he says, in monster truck racing, you're not dealing with lefts, rights, ups, and downs. You're actually dealing with pitch and yaw as well. And that's an extremely good statement for Army to describe what you're seeing here with Taurus.
Yeah, for sure. I can kind of relate to that. I've been in a few in those situations where, and much like an RC car, I'm sure you can relate there also. If you're got that thing tracking on straight, but then all of a sudden it just kind of kicks and wants to do this weird cross up, as long as you got your foot in the throttle whenever you land, granted you don't want to rip the drive line out of it. The idea is to get it to pull straight again once you get back on the ground. So it's sketchy, don't get me wrong, but that's kind of what you're seeing here.
Yeah. Next race though is a classic battle here, Cody. USA won in Bigfoot.
Oh yeah.
But it's a little bit different situation. USA 1 and Bigfoot 4 used to have incredible battles. The 1988
Yep.
championship comes to mind. Louisville,
Yep.
Kentucky, whenever USA 1 wraps it up and rolls over. I
Yep.
mean, that was the Chevy 4. That was a Chevy 4 battle back in the late 80s. Here in 1991, though, things are drastically different between these two trucks.
Things are changing, and old Everett Jasmer's on the sidelines, just kind of probably moving his glasses down his nose a little bit to pay close attention to this, because times are changing, man, and they're trying to keep up. But Brass just hands it to him just because of the technology. There's no
The
doubt about it.
technology between these trucks is just completely different than what it was in the late 80s when they were racing each other, even in the early 90s when they're racing each other in the early 1990 portion of TNT. These trucks are just, like I said, drastically different. You've got the leaf sprung USA 1 truck, still with a lot of horsepower. Don't count out Everett Jasmer's horsepower. Problem is if you can't keep it on the ground, what good is it to you?
What good
Bigfoot
is it?
8
Yep.
keeps it exactly where it needs to be.
Yep.
And Brass just flat hammers Wilkie right here.
Yeah, and when they first built 8, it had a full exhaust on it from what I can remember. And that's one thing about a blower motor. You really can't exhaust it. It doesn't do it any good. You got to get the exhaust out. That's why, a lot of the bigger stuff, the top fuel cars, 20 cars, you run a short zoomy pipe. You got to get the power out of there, get the exhaust, get that sucker breathing. And man, they were probably even down on power with Bigfoot 8 at the beginning. So they didn't even need it because they had the chassis figured out. Not entirely, but they had it figured out compared to some of the other competitors, such as, Everett's crew here, just blowing by them like nothing.
Gary Lee says, Wilkie was never in this event. Once the Christmas tree went green, Brass was gone. Army says, Gary, you're exactly right. When that light turned green, that big blue 4 was reading the riot act of the USA 1 Chevrolet. Everett Jasmer, the owner of the truck, is trying to figure it out. I think what happened here was Steve Wilkie just flat made Andy Brass mad. He told him before the race that he was going to beat him off the starting line, and Brass was no way going to concede to that.
And he did, man. He drilled him off the line.
Oh, yeah, there was no contest on the starting line.
No.
One thing that I found interesting, they cut to Wilkie and Jasmer talking, and you hear Wilkie say, I feel bad. I didn't see him until he was there. And Jasmer says, yeah. Wilkie says, so I must have been right with him. I think he's looking at totally different points of view right there.
I caught that too. You don't know if it's the production team, screwed up interviews or something, but yeah, I'm not sure what he was talking about. Or is he that sore of a loser? I don't know.
Yeah, Wilkie. Yeah, I'm sorry. He lost this race after the first hill. There was nothing nothing there that was going to make him win that race.
I don't know if he was sleeping or Andy was just on it, or is it two totally different converters and the Bigfoot 8 just works that much better. Who knows? But in the end, he got beat.
Yeah, Army Armstrong interviews Andy Brass right here, and Army says, well, Gary, in any motorsport, mind games is a part of it. Andy, as I understand, Wilkie came up to you and said he was going to drill you on the starting line. You didn't let that happen. Andy says, that's right. In this game here, there's going to be a lot of close racing. You got to play the light really good. I hit the light right. The light's going to make a lot of difference here in the races today, and he is not wrong in this particular pass in general. This race is what many people consider to be the final nail in the coffin for the USA 1 team. Jasmer was dead set in his ways, believing that it was going to be, he wanted it to go in the direction of a real racing series. And an excerpt from a 2008 interview I had with the monsterblog.com basically says he referred to monster trucks after 1989 as professional wrestling on wheels. It's a phrase that he's coined quite a bit for these races since 1989. I'm just curious of your opinion on that.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, tough pill to swallow for old Everett at this, this era in the industry. Just, man, times are moving on. Not everybody's going to have the same old stuff because, one, nobody's going to be interested anymore, and two, it's just that's how anything is. You just keep on developing. So, pro wrestling, no, I don't think so, because you look how everybody that's a huge fan of the industry, how we all think that the PENDA era
is the fastest era in motorsport.
Fastest era, and it was such the NHRA style broadcast and event that I don't even know where you would come up with wrestling time in. So,
to me, anyway, when I would look back at PENDA races, I always felt like there was a big fight feel to almost every single one of them, and that's part of the reason was that when you had Gary Lee and Army Armstrong really building these events.
absolutely. They did such a good job with it, man. But Everett, Everett is just old school as it comes. He's still
Extremely
saying
old
the
school as
same
it
stuff
comes,
to
yes.
this day. So, yeah, they're putting them into place, and
It all
they
goes back
ran.
to that old. It all goes back to that old saying, though. If you're not going forward, you're going backwards.
Well said. Yep.
To move on, though, we've got number 2, Carolina Crusher taking on Nightmare here. Crusher takes the right lane, and Nightmare takes on the left side of the track, which has been kicking trucks very high in that lane. And in a bit of a surprise, Steve Hess actually leaves on Porter, but by
Yeah.
the time they get to the car stack, in the middle of that first car stack, Porter is gone with that newer style suspension truck. And not really a good round here for Nightmare, but heck, Porter just laying the grass to him.
Yeah, for sure. Porter himself, he's got it figured out. These guys are doing some chassis stuff. He's got his a little bit different than everybody else. You notice how it's a cantilever rear, but how
Yes.
narrow the front shock tower is. The shocks go inside the chassis rails. It was pretty
Yeah,
cool. I know.
that was something I hadn't had a chance to point out on this truck yet. He had the
Yeah.
shocks mounted on the inside of the chassis, which is something you don't see these days. But it's an interesting
No.
philosophy to try, and heck, Gary tries it out right here, and it seems to be working for him.
Tries it out, and I know it's got to lay over hard, and going to turn around because I don't think he ran. I mean, you probably wouldn't run any type of sway bar with a hefty coil like that. So, got to be a handful to drive going fast like that because if it squishes one way, it probably wants to pull that same direction. So,
Hmm.
not something that the average person would think about here. So, he had his work cut out, and cool design nonetheless. I know that was Crusher 3, if I'm not
Yes,
mistaken.
Carolina
Correct?
Crusher
Yep.
3.
Yep. And then I know Wiggins went on to campaign it for a while, and Porter built a fourth one not long after this one. So probably learned a ton from this truck.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, this truck debuted, if I remember correctly, at Pocono Speedway. And the event's out there on YouTube somewhere, and it stomps the field basically, and there wasn't that much of a field there. But like I said, Gary debuts the truck there, then later on brings it to TNT, and does really well in the final event of TNT inside Freedom Hall with the truck. And then he's got about, I want to say, a half a year on it by the time he gets here, and he's starting to really get it dialed in. But like we were saying at the beginning of this track is completely different than anything these guys have seen at this point. So I kind of understand the suspension issues that we're seeing from some of these guys here.
Yep. And not to count out Hess here, if you were to rewind and have this race a year prior to this with Crusher 2,
oh man, that'd be a heck of a race.
They probably would have had it to old Porter, man, because Hess was always known for having such nice equipment.
Mm-hmm.
And you rewind to like some of the old Jamboree stuff, and I know that Hess he'd bury the pedal to the floor the entire lap.
Oh yeah, anybody with the last name Hess seems to doesn't know what the brake pedal is.
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, I know, right? Snakebite, no problem here. John Moore actually had a hauler accident on the way to Memphis, demolishing the rig, and the Equalizer team had to drive around and go help him out right there and load him up. As just an example of the camaraderie inside the sport.
Yeah, for sure, man. I don't know John and Heidi personally, but that's how much I've been into the sport itself. I mean, I know his husband and wife by first name, but
yes.
I've always been told stories, even with Mike Wine telling me that there was just some of the nicest people, and they do anything for anybody. And like you said, the camaraderie shows here. Those guys had some trouble, and they were able to make the event. Just like nothing ever happened. So everybody helps one another in this industry, and that's what's always made it so great.
Yep, I agree with you. It's astonishing to me, though, that the truck actually wasn't hurt when they brought it here. I mean, you think of a rig accident and that truck's sitting in the back of the hauler. It makes me wonder what exactly. They don't really elaborate what exactly happened here, but luckily the truck wasn't hurt, because there's been several accidents down the road, and one here recently, if I remember correctly, where one of the trucks was just completely totaled. I remember one of the Taurus trucks had an incident like this in the mid '80s as well, and they basically had to rebuild the truck.
Well, whenever you're going down the road, man, you gotta realize that thing can and will happen. But the race truck is the money maker. That's that's the baby back there. Do whatever it takes to get that thing out. I remember I can't tell you how many times I've heard of guys, even to this day in the industry, that have had to drag their trucks out of the trailer in a oh no, very scary situation, just by people stopping on the side of the road and the trailer's on fire, and let me use your pickup truck to drag this monster truck out of here. I've heard it more times.
I remember most famously, I think it was Andy Slifko that had that issue a few years ago, and you saw for a number of weeks on Monster Jam would had the black spot on the side of the truck.
Yep. Slifco had it. I know Pablo had it.
Yeah, Pablo was the other one that came.
Yeah. Unfortunately, lost those. That was a bad deal. He was able to get the tractor released and get away from that, but man, what a bad deal. I saw some photos and not pretty.
Yeah, not pretty at all when something like that happens out there. Thankfully, though, for John Moore, it didn't happen to him, and they got the truck out of there. John Moore, though, technically the slowest qualifier here in the field, as Bigfoot didn't make a pass, but he goes out here and he beats number 5 right off the bat and takes Snakebite out.
No slouch at all, man. You see him leave super hard for an older piece of equipment here in the field, but it's just great to see him out there competing and doing well, and knocks out old Cobra there.
He knocks out Gene and Snakebite here. But the one thing that I'd like to point out is this is no problem technically defeating Bigfoot 4, which is one of the most dominant trucks in the early days of monster truck racing. It's got to feel good for John. He knows what truck that is over there. He has to.
Oh, for sure. And now I'm sure he's feeling, okay, I can compete with these guys. So kudos to him, man. So going on to round 2.
Yeah, round 2 is interesting in the fact that the fastest time in round 2, no fast loser here. They are going to send somebody straight to the final round. But for John Moore, he's got a big cutout for him, a big work cut out for him anyway right here. So he's going to take on Barefoot, the number 1 qualifier. Wild Thing's going to take on Taurus. And then we've got a battle of Bigfoot and Carolina Crusher here, number 12 and 2. Interesting to see Bigfoot at number 12, but like we said, it did have issues at the beginning of the day. But man, this semifinal round is still pretty stacked.
Super stacked. Now it's getting down to the nitty gritty.
Yeah, the only name that really jumps out to me is how does he there is the Wild Thing truck. But Jim Booker, like we said, he did get, albeit due to breakage, he still beat Equalizer.
Man, just like they say, sometimes the tortoise can win the race if you're not careful.
Hey, that's happened quite a bit in monster truck racing.
Yes. Yep.
We got Wild Thing and Taurus going to be out first here. It looks like they're probably going to give no problem some time to cool down after it literally just ran a pass. So Wild Thing and Taurus here. I'm assuming this race was moved up, like I said, to give no problem some time. At the end of round 1, Snakebite got a little bit of time to get some tires back on, so it makes sense to drop that race down. Army says it's a Cinderella story here that Jim Booker, after winning his first round against the Equalizer, but I don't know how much of a Cinderella is going to... Actually, I don't know if Cinderella is going to make it to the ball. We'll put it that way, because he's got one of the toughest trucks right here in Taurus.
Definitely. I mean, he would have to maybe crack open a bottle of nitromethane and pour down the cylinders a little bit to get past Taurus. Who knows? But
he might need just a couple bottles at that point.
Couple bottles. Just two totally different chassis setups. 2 different eras of trucks. So, I mean, he's going to give it his all, and to maybe make it into the next round. Who knows? But man, you got Taurus.
Yeah, I mean, when you're racing Taurus, though, especially in this era, you've got to bring your A game, and you've got to have the truck to be able to compete. And unfortunately, Jim Booker just does not have the truck. Taurus runs a very smooth pass here, runs a time of a 6.81, but they say that they actually broke a couple of rear shock bolts on the pass. Jack Jr. says it's just a little minor thing. Shock bolts on the back doesn't seem like a minor thing to me. I mean, you're holding the actual suspension on the truck with the bolts that he's talking about.
Yeah. That just goes back to show that, this is still early development of still trying to get these things figured out. Did they think that they're going to jump this big, this early in, this type of chassis setup? Probably not. So
it's interesting.
I'm sure they went home and beefed things up, but they had to learn some way.
Yeah. What's interesting to me, though, is the cast of characters that seem to be standing around Jack Jr. after his interview with Army. We see Steve Wilkie standing there, Greg Holbrook, and, of course, Everett Jasmer, who seems to be up by everybody's truck after every interview in this event.
Nosy Rosie. You got to figure out what's going on. Absolutely. They want to know what's good and bad.
Exactly. I mean, at this time, too, you don't know if Jasmer's he's not considering getting out of the sport. He may not like it very much. He may not like the direction that it's going, but I do know for a fact there's another USA 1 it's actually still sitting there, not completed, that he started around this time, maybe around 1990 or so, mid-1990. It's been sitting in the shop. He could be looking at different ideas to throw into that truck.
Or quite possibly had the same ideas and said, oh, shit, that's not going to work. Scratch that out when we get back to the shop.
Exactly. We got number 12, Bigfoot, taking on Carolina Crusher here. Brass has the left lane, and Porter being the second quickest qualifier. I would assume he had lane choice here, and he took the right lane, which was a little weird to me. But again, the left lane's kicking guys pretty high in the air. So I don't know. It's kind of a toss-up here as to which lane is which. Excuse me.
I would say it's confident in driving and the equipment to switch lanes like that.
Yeah, I could see that as well. I
Yep.
mean, both trucks here, suspension-wise, I would say they're pretty close to even. I mean, he's got a little bit different philosophy. I think he's got a coilover in the front and the cantilever in the rear with a coilover attached to it. Brass, of
Right.
course, has the nitrogen shocks on there that's working really well under Bigfoot 8.
Yep.
I mean, it's kind of a toss-up here, but Bigfoot just kind of soaks up the landing, and Porter's truck doesn't soak up the landing, and that's what eventually propels Brass to the win.
Yeah, you would think. I'm trying to remember. Right, was Bigfoot 8 at the time? Did that have Clark planetaries underneath it? I can't remember. I know Porter did. So yeah, the drivetrain super similar, other than the crankshaft. One Chevrolet, one Ford. So
yeah, man, I don't remember what axles rendered. I didn't think to look at that.
Yeah,
I can't remember when they went to ZF.
I don't think it was until I know the early days they played with quite a few of.
Yeah, they played with
They had a
everybody back in the early
Carrera
days.
axle at one time. They had a Clark, 2.5 ton with a Clark. They had a straight ZF. They had that Carrera. I already said the Carrera, but that was super lightweight. I know that infamous video of it was at an arena show. It might have been 8. And it does this giant wheel stand and there's a rip in the rear end of the truck. That was a Carrera axle.
Yeah, that was 9.
Super small. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that was 9 with Kramer behind the wheel.
Yeah.
I could be wrong though. Again, don't shoot me in the comments of this, everybody. But Bigfoot goes 6.43 right here, which is the quickest time at the moment to go into the final round. I got to tell you though, Bigfoot 8 just looks extremely smooth right now, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be beat.
No, definitely. They're making adjustments each round and making it better to try to keep up with old Schaefer and Jackie there.
Yeah. Speaking of Schaefer, Barefoot no problem here. Fred takes that left lane, which, like we said, has been kicking people pretty high, but it doesn't seem to bother him at all. The right side seems to be tossing guys for a loop at this point, so it seems like to me the lanes have kind of flip-flopped a little bit. The left lane didn't seem like where they wanted to be at the beginning of the event. Now it seems like the faster trucks are migrating over there at this point in the event. And man, this race, again, kind of no contest between these two trucks with the suspension set up the way it is. Moore has an okay showing for himself in the right lane, but Barefoot comes out, runs a 6.57 second pass, which means we're going to see Barefoot and Taurus in the semifinal race. Winner takes on Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And so we got our big 3 right there.
Did you think it looked like it had rained either that day or day before? Because it
did look a little wet now that I think of it. Yes,
a bunch of clumps just pushed up here and there, and it looks like they drug the track last minute to make it able to compete that day. And now that rounds are going by, if it's soft like that, then yeah, I would bet each round the ramp face changes. It's probably getting more cupped out.
Mm-hmm.
It's got a groove in it, so maybe that is Fred's issue, is the ramp itself, or a combination of gearing and power and the ramp. So it's getting interesting.
Oh yeah, and what's interesting here is the fact that it's Barefoot and Taurus in the semifinal. There is no love lost between those two pairs.
No love lost.
None
They're coming
whatsoever.
out of pretty much the same area of the country. They're probably doing their homework together, and then
well, I mean,
they
you
get
look
to
at
the
it,
track.
the final 3 trucks left in this competition. One's in Granite City, Illinois. The other's in Pontoon Beach, Illinois, and the other's in Hazelwood, Missouri. That's like boom, boom, boom down the road from each other.
Right there. Yeah. And they've all got 3 different setups, and there you are. They're top 3 in the field.
Yeah, we've got a Chevrolet Barefoot, a GMC Taurus, and a Ford Bigfoot here in the last 3 trucks, basically. The winner of this race, though, is going to take on Bigfoot in the final round. Interesting fact, these trucks are all sponsored by a major toy company right here, with Tonka sponsoring Barefoot and Taurus, and Hot Wheels with Bigfoot. And we know nowadays Bigfoot's back with Hot Wheels, and they're doing a very good job of things.
I always wondered that. Was the Tonka deal to each truck? I kind of thought it was something that went along with the series then.
You know,
Kind of like a
it may be.
BKT
They don't
thing
elaborate
nowadays.
on it. They just point out
Yeah.
that both trucks have Tonka decals on them.
Oh, interesting. But I want to back up a little bit before we go any further. Look at this. Look at the 3 left here. How cool that is. You don't even see anything like that today. Do you have 3 different chassis, 3 top competitive trucks running? You really don't.
No,
Unfortunately.
no. I mean,
what comes to mind? Like, could you imagine, say, John Gordon out there with his stuff? Hartsock out there with his, and Kohler and coming up the third one. It's just there's so not much diversity anymore.
Yeah, not
Kind of
anymore. I
sucks,
mean,
but
it seems like
yeah.
everything's kind of it's almost getting to the point where it's like a NASCAR anymore, where everything's all pretty much the
Hmm.
same, minus a few different things that make that one a Ford and that one a Chevy and that one a Dodge or that one a
Yes.
Pontiac or whatever. But I
Yep.
mean, not much diversity left out there. You're exactly right with that. I
Yep.
mean, there are different chassis out there, but it's still the same
Yep.
philosophy in a lot of these
Same.
chassis, whether it's
Yeah.
concussion, CRD, the
Yep.
Hartsock chassis, the Kohler chassis, and the engine's
Yep.
still very low in the chassis, and every bit of the center of gravity is not very much has changed. We'll put it that way.
Yep. And that's why part of, I love this era so much, because it was so crazy all over the place with what guys were doing, and there was a fine line of were they where should they been going that fast for what the equipment was capable of, and just such a big learning curve in this era. I loved it.
Yeah, there was a huge learning curve in this area. One thing that they were really having issues, and we'll see more of it in day two, is the brake issues that these trucks were having back then. They needed a lot of
Yeah.
shutdown room for these trucks, and they're going
Yeah.
way too fast for some of this shutdown room that they have here, especially at this particular event in Memphis.
Yeah, for sure. I know Stevens fought with it a little bit, but probably everybody was. You're boiling the fluid over, and you're just having a time trying to get the truck stopped going at this rate of speed. So
This race, though, we see Taurus actually leave the line first and have a really straight launch and actually lands better than Barefoot. Barefoot doesn't really have the landing that it needs. It kind of shoots a little bit, I believe, off to the left. And man, Taurus goes on to win this thing, but Jackie has some problems at the end of the track. The left rear tire just says, "I'm done."
yeah, it looked like it wasn't worthy of taking the tire out, but I would be willing to put money on, man, those guys. That was once a full cleat Goodyear, probably a 6-ply if I know those guys trying to keep it lightweight.
Hmm.
And man, they are so fragile. They probably cut them to the cords, and all it takes is one little rock to go right there in the sidewall, and you're done. And it looks like that's what happened. So didn't take
Yeah,
much.
yeah. What I find interesting here is the fact they say that they kind of cut the camera over there, and you see Jack Jr. and Senior basically running all around the truck, and they ask if they can have 5 minutes to get the truck repaired, to get the tire back on the bead again.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, Jack says that they have the back of the bead, or excuse me, the front bead is still on, and the back bead is what burst off. So they're trying to get the truck. They need 5 minutes just to get some air on the tires, and they want to get it back to the line. And one thing they don't mention in this broadcast is points. Taurus is running. I mean, this is still a series. These guys are going to go on and compete a little bit more in '91 for a points championship with PENDA.
Yep.
So they don't mention
Yeah.
the fact that Taurus wants to get back to the line, because if he gets to the line, he gets some more points.
Yeah, they just think like, oh man, these guys are really eager to race. Just
Yeah.
if it's flat, it's flat. So yeah, not a big deal to get the tire, replaced or just aired back up if it's holding the bead on one side. Just get the weight off of it. It should
Yeah,
take
and
air, but
also back then these guys are running for a purse as well. Second
yep,
place point or
yep,
second place points, second place money. That's no slouch
yep.
back in those days.
No, not at all. And that's they probably thought, well, we got a hurt tire. It probably going to let go right there in the middle of no man's land. So let's just be happy, take our second place money, and then still be right up there in the points and charge hard the next day or the next weekend. Very smart.
Yeah, and it's also incredibly smart on their behalf to try to get it fixed and pull to the line.
Yep.
I point that
Yep.
out because the race that we covered it for Columbus 1992 when I had Matt Stoltz on the show was there was a race in the final round. It was Taurus and Barefoot. Taurus was in two-wheel drive. He goes out and competes, but he still kind of pressures Fred a little bit, and Fred actually red lights, and Taurus ends up winning the entire event in two-wheel drive.
That's all it
It's
takes.
one of those events where they go from extremely mad at the officials for not letting them run in two-wheel drive to just smiling and happy that they got the winner's trick at the end of the day because Fred red lighted.
You'll have those weekends like that sometimes, man. That's how racing goes.
Oh yeah, and what they're hoping here for is number one, Bigfoot red lights, Brass leaves early, Bigfoot's disqualified because he doesn't believe the fact that they actually have as bad of an issue as what they have going on.
Yep.
And number two is Brass DQs himself. Brass leaves okay, but then misses the second set of cars and has a penalty, and then they can scoot across the line to steal a win. Of course, unfortunately, neither of those happens. Bigfoot sees what's going on after the first set of cars. Brass kind of lets off a little bit and goes on to basically take the win from Jackie in day number one here. Bigfoot steals up first place on the day in day number 1. We head into day 2, though, and it's interesting that Army and Gary are now standing in front of USA 1. And to me, as an old, like, we're old school guys. We like old school monster trucks. Day 1, they're standing in front of Bigfoot 4. Day 2, they're standing in front of USA 1. It's the 88 Points Championships trucks that open the first 2 PENDA broadcasts.
I don't know. I guess maybe it was clean compared to the other trucks. Who knows? But
yeah, I mean,
still
USA 1 being as clean
yeah.
as it always was clean. I mean, you can't really get that white body all that dirty unless you go straight through mud.
Yeah. Yep. So maybe that's probably the reason as a backdrop. Who knows?
Yeah, you never know. But still, like, to me, the old school fan of me was like, oh, there's 288 championship trucks battling each other.
Yeah.
Army, Memphis, or excuse me, Gary says Army, Memphis may be recognized for the blues and spicy barbecue, but it's also a hotbed for high performance components. And Army says, Gary, there's some people out there that have the image in their head that in Southern California, that's the only place where you can make speed parts. That's just simply wrong. There's at least 3 or 4 places out here in Memphis that help really build speed. And then they go off listing some of the big name performance parts available in the area. Companies like TCI Transmissions and Torque Converters, Competition Cams, Wanati Cams. Just a few things out there. The one thing that got me on this is, yes, they show all those sponsor names, but they show the decals on the trucks. They don't show the actual truck that those people are sponsoring.
Interesting. Huh. It's kind of funny. I've got one of my best friends is Nate Williamson, who's Clay Milliken's nephew, and they live out there in Memphis. And he literally just got done filming some type of segment for Comp Cams out there with Clay. So kind of funny they brought that up, man. Comp Cams has been in the game for a long time, and cool that they recognize, local companies like that on this broadcast. Really cool.
Yeah, I mean, this is a TNM broadcast. There's going to be a lot of eyes on this, especially any motorsports fan. TNM was, aside from ESPN at the time, was the place for motorsports broadcasting. They were broadcasting power boats, monster trucks, NASCAR, just about everything under the sun on TNN as well as ESPN back in the day. And they're getting a lot of big-time exposure here in this broadcast.
On a regular basis, yeah. I know, NBC and ABC, they did some of the special
yeah, they did like some of the
events,
special,
I guess you could say.
The bigger events.
Yeah.
Like the Daytona 500.
Correct. They would highlight it, but nothing like this had been done before. A regular taped event or showing, I should say.
We get the same format as day 1, but there are a few different trucks here in the pairings, mainly because a couple of trucks had some issues in day number 1, like we had mentioned, the Equalizer being one of them. Yeah. We got 2 open qualifiers again coming back here. They specify the open qualifiers, but for life of me, I must have forgot to write them down exactly which ones they were. I remember Bad Medicine being one, and that's a truck that I wanted to touch on just a little bit here, because if you look at that truck, you may not notice anything different about, it's a new truck on the circuit. No, that's actually Carolina Crusher number 2. A lot of people look at that truck and you cannot coordinate Carolina Crusher 2 and Bad Medicine. If you look at the two, they are completely different looking trucks than each other, but it's the same chassis sitting underneath that truck.
Same chassis. It sat a lot lower for some odd reason. What was the fella's name? Don Van Loo. I'm sure they made a bunch of adjustments to get it to their liking, but yeah, that's it.
Yep, old Carolina Crusher number 2 sees some life here in this race. Unfortunately, though, for Bad Medicine, it's got Barefoot in round number 1. It's Barefoot again, number 1 qualifier. Snakebite consistently is number 5 in this bracket. This time he's taking Nightlife on, number 11. Then we got Carolina Crusher and Big Boss, the Hall brothers, making a TV debut, I think, right here. Taurus and Nightmare. Taurus, again, consistent, number 4 qualifier. King Crunch at number 6, taking on No Problem at number 12. And then a rematch from the day before, Bigfoot at number 2 this time, taking on USA 1 at number 8.
I'm just quick looking at the pairings. Who do we not have from the day prior?
Equalizer, Wild Thing.
Equalizer, correct. Broke, yes, that's correct.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that Wild Thing isn't in there, but I mean, they had to have opened it up for at least one more truck, you think, right?
You would think.
With Equalizer not being there, they had to. I mean, I think they had to.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why Bad Medicine and Big Boss are in there.
2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. Okay. Yeah.
Barefoot and Bad Medicine, like I was saying earlier, this is Carolina Crusher number 2. It's no slouch in any monster truck race. Problem is, neither is the truck in the other lane. the USHRA champion Barefoot in round number 1 for Don Van Loo. Basically, welcome to the sport, kid.
Yep. Here you go. Good luck.
That's like somebody qualifying at NASCAR and they're starting on the row next to Dale Earnhardt.
Mm-hmm. Not
Don
intimidating at all.
Oh, not intimidating. No, not that black car.
No.
But here you got a big blue Chevrolet in the other lane that is just dead set on trying to get a win right here. I mean, you know, Fred's a competitor. It's like all these guys were competitors. Fred had to have hated losing to Taurus the day before. So you know he's out for blood today.
Oh yeah, his pride was showing then really hard. So he's going for it today. I'm sure. I know in the early days, I don't know that he had much of a crew. I know his wife Kathy went along with it. You know, coincidentally, going on a side note here, Schaefer lives right down the road from me. So I got to go pay him a visit one of these days. We talk every
do me
now
a favor,
and then.
bring him down next time we do a podcast. That'd be great.
Oh man, that'd be awesome. Yeah, for sure. Last I saw him was at Kalen Hardsock's wedding. He was there, and I pulled Scott by the arm. I said, "Is that Fred?" He started laughing. He says, "Go talk to him, you dork." So we did.
I'd probably be the same way. I remember the first time I met Jim Kramer, I was like standing next to a friend of mine, and I kind of whispered out of the corner of my mouth, I said, "That's Jim Kramer." And he says, "Yeah, go get a picture." I said, "I can't move."
Yep. So
there's very few guys in this industry that you kind of still get starstruck at seeing. Jim Kramer for me is one of them. When I first met Dennis, it was that way. I was a little bit starstruck at that. There's just two guys I grew up on, man, and I know Fred Schaefer's kind of the same way.
Same way. There's the guys that I compete with today that I'm the same way. You know, Dennis, Tom, Kohler, those guys. It's an exciting intimidation.
Yeah, it's exciting intimidation because at the same time you're like, man, please be my friend.
Yeah.
But anyway, man, we go on to this next race right here. We've got Snakebite, number 5, taking on Nightlife at number 11 here. And again, they misspell Wayne's last name. They just must not be paying attention to their sheets or anything when they put this stuff together. Shame on the production staff for getting his name wrong.
They're playing with it at this point.
Yeah, I mean, heck, you had a whole other show. No. Army again goes over the backstory of Colt Cobra as they line up here. The left lane goes to the Snakebite, right lane goes to Nightlife. And upon the landing here, it appears that both front tires for Snakebite don't settle. And Wayne just smooth over that first set of cars, smooth over the second set of cars. And the only issue Wayne has is the landing on the second set where the front end just kind of does what the old Leafer trucks used to do. It bounce a little bit before it would actually get stopped. Nightlife kind of steals an upset win right here.
This had to have been one of the first few events with 4 being set up with this particular configuration with the nitro shocks on a leaf spring, because I can remember this thing working flawless years later, doing arena shows, even some of the longer drag courses. But
no, it had the nitrogen shock on the rear, I believe, for some of the TNT events that it did in 1990.
Okay.
But it was just for some reason at this particular event, the suspension, it reminds me of King Crunch, honestly, with how loose
that
it is.
Smooth. Yeah,
it's not smooth at all.
And he's got his hands full with it. So, depending on if that truck was a little bit outdated as far as some of the components on it, was it a belt drive, Saginaw style steering pump, and it's just you constantly chasing the wheel, versus a crank hydraulic pump, probably what Schaefer, foot guys probably had. So, man, I can only imagine bouncing around like that in no man's land and trying to get a leaf sprung truck squared up for the next hit.
Yeah, he doesn't really get it squared up for the second hit at all. Speaking of Snakebite, anyway, he actually DQs on the pass and only gets the left front tire up on the cars. Truthfully, we could be talking about this and talking about how inconsistent the truck is. I honestly believe that in this particular case, it's the track that's inconsistent for these trucks. 4 could be exactly the same, but then they bring it to this particular event where they've got a completely different style of straight line going on here. And like you said earlier, guys that haven't built this style of track or this long of a track before, it's definitely upsetting these trucks. And I think that could be the major reason that we see Snakebite have the issue right here.
Yeah, for sure. What you're talking about, what comes to mind is you look at Everett stuff with either Litzau or Wilkie behind it. You look at the TNT Arena stuff. The bounce those trucks had worked for them. They go over the roller on the whole shot and then wait for the bounce and trip it over the car set, and it would work. So,
for some trucks it would work, for some it didn't, but mostly for those trucks it did.
And in Everett's mind, he says, well, man, if this is going to be the way for a while, then we got it figured out. We just keep putting motor program together, and we got it. So
Yeah.
now the trucks are going longer courses outdoors like this, and it's showing the engineering changes leaving everybody behind.
Yep. I agree with you. It was kind of funny in the interview right here. Wayne, I can tell by that run you aren't afraid of snakes one bit, are you? And he's, no, I don't want to get snake bit. Quick little interview with Wayne. I just thought that was a kind of a little cool little audio bite there from him as we go into Carolina Crusher and Big Boss. And this is where we get one of the funniest things I've seen. I legit had to freeze the broadcast when I was watching this and kind of laugh a little bit because it says Tim Hall, and then you see Mark Hall with that 1988 style Motley Crue haircut with the trucker hat on. It's funny to me knowing what Mark has become over the years, and here you see him looks like he just got off the tour bus.
Yeah, nowadays Mark is clean cut, almost fits in a funny car or a NASCAR program or something with how tight of a ship those guys run now. But
oh yeah,
man, everybody's got to get their start somewhere, and here they are.
Yeah, here they are. They've got a good sponsor though. Kyosho is an RC company that has come out with several very good vehicles. If y'all get a chance, Google what a Kyosho Big Boss looks like. It's a cool little vehicle that they had going on, and here they're sponsored by Kyosho. Our buddy Cheech works for Raminator. Cheech has been on this show before. It's the Hampton, Virginia episode. If y'all want to ever check it out, you can listen to that here on Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. Plug myself on my own podcast. But anyway, Cheech actually just built himself an RC version of this truck that sits in the Hall Brothers shop as well, and it's a cool little addition. I think the brothers really like having it there. But here, though, probably a bit outmatched.
I would say so, yeah. Again, just two totally different chassis setups. Power probably not an issue. The Halls have always been known for building big power. Just Porter just leave him in the dust just because of his chassis configuration with the suspension set up like it is. And
well, this is where his suspension comes in. This is where the suspension comes in to play, though. Those loose suspension that it really bites Gary right here after he crosses the finish line. The truck just veers to the left, and to me, it almost looked like the front steering was gone on the truck because the front wheels did not seem to turn at all for him at that point. The truck kind of just he goes straight. He knows the pole's coming up. He hits the brakes, and when he does, the right front kind of folds under the truck. The left rear pops up, and then the truck just has one of the slowest rollovers I think I've ever seen in a monster truck. It just kind of lays over on its side, which is kind of honestly the best kind of rollover you could possibly have.
Yeah, just super soft. And, I'd like to see the video again of it. Now that I'm more mechanically inclined than I was back in this era in 91. What was I, 6 years old? So I'd like to see it again. Did he lose motor power? And did he just kind of,
he was still going
that way? Or
it's weird to describe. He lands off the second set of cars, somehow stays legal on the run. After the DQ lines, he kind of goes to the left a little bit, and it just looks like his front tires are just cocked slightly to the left. I can't really see because it's an old videotape that we're watching on YouTube, basically, that somebody copied onto here. You can't really see what his hands are doing in there, but the front tires don't appear to be kind of counter steering at all. The truck just starts to veer to the left. He knows he's getting close to one of the telephone poles at the end of the track, so Gary stabs on the brakes, and when he does, that front end on the right side just kind of lowers a little bit, and when it does, the right rear hooks, brings the left rear up, and it just tumbles. Just a slow rollover.
I would never doubt Porter's driving ability and capability ever. So he did this for a reason.
Yeah, and honestly, you can see it later in this broadcast. You can see the pole that he's speaking of. You don't really see it here, but later in the broadcast, you do see there's a telephone pole right over there. So Porter made the right decision.
Yep. As lame as it may look as a crash rollover, he did it for a reason. So it could have been something as simple as, the steering pump just could have locked up and he had nothing. Yeah. So he was just along for the ride and did it as safely as he could. So, I mean, think about that. I think he did a damn good job if that was the case.
Yeah, I do too. One thing that Army says right here, first of all, Gary, are you okay? Gary says, I'm fine. And that's something I think you can agree with me on this, that I wish that they would ask drivers more often. As far as an accident goes, I wish that they didn't just hop out of the truck and they're like, oh, what a wild ride that was for you, or something like that. I wish they'd just say, hey, are you all right?
Totally guilty of that, dude. There's so many times you get out of the truck and you're like, man, I don't even know what city I'm at to even have this conversation with you. So then you just got to go along with it and rely on they call it the host.
Yeah.
rely on the announcer to pick you up. I just kind of go with it. But yeah, they do ask some of the, Leslie Mears will always ask off microphone before she clicks it on. You all right? They look nasty. Or are you all right? Let's do this.
Yeah, I wish that they would do that on camera. That's just a
Yeah.
pet peeve of
Yeah.
mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
there are
it's
some
just,
accidents out there that are incredibly hard on these guys, and I would really just like to know, for a personal standpoint, are they all right after seeing something like that?
it's just good for sportsmanship.
Yes, 100% agree
Yep.
with you right there.
Yep. Yep.
Gary gives kind of a simple explanation on the rollover. He says, I hit that second set of cars a bit crooked. I started to let out of it. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know where the other guy was, so I was going to go for the win. I should have backed out. Turned a little bit and slowed down. The truck landed hard on the left side. It started coming over this way, and I seen the pole. I hit the brakes a little bit too hard, I think. So he's blaming the rollover on the fact that he hit the brakes too hard, but I think he hit them just hard enough, honestly. I think it was a good decision to. I don't think he wanted to dump the truck. I think, if anything, he wanted to just kind of slide it out. But
Right.
I mean, he made the right decision. He saved the building, or excuse me, the building, the fairgrounds a little bit of money right there.
Sure. Yeah. No, he could have done it any better with what he had to work with.
Number 4, Taurus taking on Nightmare right here, and again, this is another battle of old school and new school right here. And they even say it at the beginning of the beginning of it. Army says, Gary, right now we're seeing the old and the new. Beginning of the leaf sprung suspension stage 2 truck right here, taking on this new style Taurus in the other lane. The finalist from day one looks much better today after losing that tire the day before. From what I'm seeing here, it seems like every truck is now preferring the right lane to the left lane at this particular the second day of the show. Almost every hole shot has came out of that right lane too. Now that I'm actually now that we're getting into this, it seems like every time they get a close up of the trucks before they take off, that right lane's leaving before the left.
Yeah, it could be a little bit of standing water in the left lane there. Who knows? But just think of how upsetting must it be for some of the guys that have some of the older equipment just getting left by these newer technology trucks. I mean, you look at Hess's stuff, man. Nice stuff, but just still doesn't hold a candle to the Taurus.
Yeah, I mean, you've
stuff.
got a truck like, and I mean, there's trucks out there like Taurus, out there like Bigfoot that have a little bit of money and sponsorship backing them, whereas Nightmare really didn't have that at this point. I do believe later on they're going to get some backing from GMC, but here, unfortunately, they're not going. They don't really have much to back them on, and I know that this Nightmare truck's seen better days, and it's close to its retirement basically at this point. But here, like I said, completely outmatched against that truck in the other lane. Taurus goes on to take the win.
Yeah, not long after this, Hess was following suit with all the other guys. He probably had the chassis being built while he was at this event to go to that, his first tube chassis there, coilover, which then ended up becoming one of Calvin's trucks, I believe.
Yeah, yep, you're right.
Kwasniewski had it, and then Calvin had it as Wildfire. But yeah, I think Kwasniewski had it, right?
No, you could be correct. I'm not sure.
Yeah, other way around maybe.
I'm sure we'll get corrected on it.
Yeah, I'm sure. But yeah, nonetheless, yeah, I can't even remember where we were at.
One thing that Army says right here after this particular race right here, he says that they're trying to build him now to act like a sponge to absorb the impact. And I'm wondering if you remember this. I didn't put this in the notes. I told myself I wasn't going to bring this up, but I have to. You and I are veterans from way back in the day of virtual monster truck racing and Monster Truck Madness 2. Do you remember the coin term for some of the trucks with softer suspension as sponge trucks?
Sponge trucks. What else? Yes, I do. And I thought there was something else we called them too. I do remember. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's kind of ironic.
Yeah, I mean, I know exactly where they got the name from.
Yep.
We got King Crunch and No Problem here in the next particular race. This is a TNT Motorsports matchup right here, if I ever saw one.
Yes, now we're getting where we probably should still be. A level playing field here. Good, two really good guys that have been in it for a while with the industry, and then right there in TNT, those guys are always hard chargers in that series, and here they are, man, still footing the bill themselves and out there. What a great race.
Yeah, previous run or the previous pass was the difference, but about the difference between the chassis. Here, they're pretty much the same philosophy. Suspension wise, though, I would probably have to give the advantage to King Crunch, as well as wheelbase wise. I would give the advantage to King Crunch here. Short wheelbase really never did work all that well on a straight line, and you'd see that right here as King Crunch goes on to take the win from no problem, no problem. Decent pass, just didn't really have anything for Scott Stevens that day.
No, like you pretty much hit the nail on the head, man. Just a little bit advancement in chassis design for Scott, and motors by him.
Yeah, and we move on to the next pair again here. Another chassis versus chassis matchup. Honestly, it could be big motor versus chassis in this matchup. We got Bigfoot and USA One. Wilkie, I like the close up here of Wilkie putting on his goggles, and the camera pans back, and then you see the points champion from 1990 TNT Bigfoot 8 Nanny Brass, whom today is now sporting flags on the back of the truck. It makes you wonder, just going back to day one for a little bit of a sidebar, when they were working on that truck, did they just not have time to throw the flags on the truck?
I've been there, done that. Totally forget, skips your mind, and you're like, oh, whoops, hope nobody caught that.
Yeah, and they go out there, they throw the flags on the truck for day two. We've got Ford and Hot Wheels being represented on the back of Bigfoot. And unlike the previous day's competition, the second day in a row, though, we've seen this long rivalry renewed. And Army hits the nail on the head here. For those of you that have liked that Chevrolet truck, you've pulled for the white truck. And if you like that Ford, then you're going to pull for the blue truck. Army states that Brass is in the left lane, and he gets the whole shot. I mean, again, on Wilkie here, and it's another high-tech truck victory. I mean, USA One not even in this race.
No, and, with this particular lineup right here, this round between these two, the Bigfoot guys are pouring the coal just a little bit more this round just to prove a point.
Yeah, and that's a shame for that truck in the right lane for the USA One truck. They put their heart and soul into that truck. That truck is still beautiful to this day. Yes, when you go look at that truck, it's one of the pieces of history that has been preserved in monster truck racing, and kudos to Everett for doing that for both this truck and his original truck that he has. They both look phenomenal. But right here, this truck's just outmatched.
Yeah, plain and simple, just outmatched. And I always like to think, what if it would have still been involved to this day? Where would they have gone? How far would they have made it? If it wasn't,
that's one of the big what ifs in monster trucks, really.
Yeah. What if? I mean, if it wasn't then how much longer would it have been? And who knows?
Oh yeah, I mean there's a ton of what ifs in monster trucks, but I think at the top of that list is what we just said right there. What if USA One had stuck around? What if they had built a more competition oriented truck? What if Jasmer had tried to keep the fact that he was the #1 Chevrolet truck in the country after 1988 and advance that truck along a little bit more? Would we be talking about Bigfoot and Gravedigger as much?
But at the end of the day, I probably wouldn't want it any other way than how it all unfolded.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
That's our childhood, man. That's how it went.
Yeah, I tend to agree. We go into the fastest round 2 time, goes to the finals again, and this one we've got Barefoot and Nightlife in the first pair. Then we got Bigfoot and King Crunch. And then we've got Carolina Crusher and Taurus taking on each other. Man, 3 good races right here between 6 great trucks.
Yeah, for sure. Old sleeper there, Nightlife, Smozanic, he's got a truck that's capable, but he's going up against a truck that's a little more capable. So
yeah, he's going up against a truck that's more capable. But what happens here is it sounds like, according to Andy Brass a little bit later in this broadcast, that Fred's Linko slips out of gear on the start line. But if you listen to Fred, it's the kill box that goes out. Fred's truck just dies on the line, and Wayne Smozanic goes to his first semifinal, and I believe this might have been his first second event ever.
Yeah, here comes the diehard racer and old Schaefer here. Yeah, you could tell.
It's never my fault.
No, never my fault. But you can listen. You can listen to the broadcast. You hear the motor rev up, and then keeps on driving off. I know from experiences you can't just quick reset the radio like that and keep motoring on. So
yeah, exactly, and that's what Brass points out as well in his interview a little bit later when Army interviews him. One thing to point out here: drastically slower time from Nightlife than what we saw the day before. We were seeing mid-6s, I believe, the day before. Today is an 8.17. That it's the time to beat currently to go to the finals.
Yeah, he more than likely he heard the motor come up on Schaefer's end of the track and probably let out of the pedal a little bit, knowing that he could save some of his equipment.
And I mean, he's a privateer. He's a privateer at the time too.
Yes. Smart.
The interview here we get with Fred, Army actually asked that he believes there was a cylinder down on the truck before he went to the line, and of course, Fred completely denies that, blames it on the kill box. Army then says, "I was standing about half track and I heard the engine cut like you had turned the ignition off," which is interesting because, like we were just saying, Andy Brass says he heard one thing, Army Armstrong saying he hears something a little bit different.
Everybody's got an excuse, right?
Yeah, and honestly, I think Army might have just been poking the bear a little bit.
He's got to.
Army
That's
was known
his
to
job.
do that.
That's his job. Yep.
Exactly. He gets Fred frustrated, though. After Fred replies to him on that, he says, "You don't have any recourse at all?" And Fred almost angrily answers him and says, "Well, they said I was out. What am I supposed to do?"
Come out here and I was the fastest guy 2 days in a row.
Yeah, exactly.
love
I'm the
it.
fastest
I love
guy.
it.
That's all I can do, kind of thing. I mean, he doesn't seem happy at all with Army. He seems pretty upset, but that's Army's job, is poke the bear and get a little bit more TV.
Yeah.
A little better TV.
Yeah. I loved it.
Oh, I loved it too. I kind of chuckled at it. I was like, oh, I could see Fred Schaefer mad. There we go. We get number 2, Bigfoot taking on King Crunch right here. Man, that is a matchup that in 1990 was probably, if you'd have sold that on pay-per-view, I guarantee you it would have sold out.
That was monster truck racing right there for sure. Two guys that, you know, lined up with one another more times than one, and just
a lot of talk
as
between those two
hard
teams.
of a racer as it comes. Yes.
Yeah, there was a
Guys-
lot of talk between those two
Guys putting
teams.
so much time and effort into these trucks, trying to make it faster than the other, and just a good pairing.
Yeah, a great pairing and just two great rivalries. Of course, Scott Stevens, famously the one that calls out Bigfoot team in Dallas the first weekend that 8 was banned, basically saying, hey, they're out here with equal equipment and they haven't made it past round 2. What does that tell you?
Yep.
And then Scott kind of eats his words the rest of that season, because Bigfoot comes back with a vengeance with number 4 in Louisville, comes back and runs a few other events, I believe Richmond as well as Myrtle Beach. And then 8 comes back, and Stevens kind of has to shut his mouth at that point, because that truck's back on track. And here he is again, taking on Bigfoot number 8. And I'm pretty sure Scott Stevens isn't happy about it. And you kind of understand why, because Bigfoot lays it to the wood.
Yeah, for sure. Lays the wood on him, and just proving that, again, the difference in the technology.
Yep. And honestly, the time is slower again here, as Bigfoot runs a 7.57. Mid-6s the day before. Today is 7.57 for Bigfoot. And, I mean, Brass, I don't know if he backed off a little bit or what there. Maybe because he knows Barefoot is out, he could run the truck a little bit easier, save some equipment before the next round. I don't know. It was a little weird to me to see them running this little bit slower time than they had the day before. You
wouldn't think they'd back out, because, you got Crusher and Taurus right there the next pair, so you're going to have a good time for a lane choice. So, man,
yeah.
With him being slower and then Smozanik being slower, it's a possibility that the weather change.
You do say lane choice, and that's something that has been, like, when I watch some of these old events back, I mean, it's hard to distinguish sometimes what lane choice is, because in some events, if you're the quick qualifier, you've got lane choice all the way through the finals if you get that far.
Right.
Here, I'm not sure who or what lane choice is what, if the faster time in the other round gets it, or if it's the faster qualifier gets it. It's weird. They don't specify it in this particular event, but I don't remember exactly when that rule was in place where the faster time in the previous round got lane choice.
You're right. I can see that. Yep, you're right. I'm going off of how we do it today's era.
Yes.
That's how we do it. The round prior, whoever was faster, that's your lane choice. Because I argue up and down sometimes, and sometimes I'll get fed up and just start and go to that line and wait for the other guy to move out of my way.
Yeah, there you go. But man, we get the matchup of round 2 here, as we get Carolina Crusher and Taurus. Race was dropped to the bottom to give Crusher a little bit more time, and we see Crusher pulling up to the line. There was at least 5 or 6 guys over there working on Carolina Crusher. It looked like there was something maybe in the drive line they were trying to fix underneath the truck. I didn't see anybody really working on the front steering, which I thought that had to be one of the issues, was front steering, because just the way that the front wheels looked when it was they were cockeyed to the left just a little bit there after that jump. But it doesn't look like they're working on that. They're more working on towards the front of the drive shaft underneath the truck. But of course, they get it done. They get to the line right here, and Taurus goes on to take the win over Carolina Crusher. Crusher has an odd bounce in the middle of no man's land, which you wouldn't have expected with this newer style suspension truck. but it happens to Gary here. There's nothing that he can really do about it. But this is where it gets cool, Cody. 7.56 for Taurus, beating out Bigfoot by .01 to go straight to the finals.
Going right to the final, yeah. Crusher, Porter, man, give it to those guys working their butts off right there at the last minute to go get lined up, but doing it for points. They're trying to stay in the points battle, doing it. I would not venture too far that it might have just been a brake issue with why he rolled over, and
it could have been as well. They could have been working on the brakes.
Showing him tinkering with something with the where the brake rotor would be on the ring and pinion there. So who knows? But yeah, Taurus just edging out the Foot guys for just a little bit faster time and faster pass. For
the one thing that you notice here is the day before it was Bigfoot that edged out Taurus, I believe, and now it's Taurus edging out Bigfoot. So the story of the weekend is those two trucks to me.
Yep.
We go into the semifinal, and honestly, probably a no contest here, except Andy almost does give this race to Wayne in the other lane. Andy gets a really high launch over that first set of cars. It lands with the rear end coming down, and when the front lands, it kicks that rear end back up, and when the truck settles in no man's land, it wants to kick out from under Andy, and he has to do one of those things where the truck almost spins a little bit. He has to get off the throttle, straightens it out, and goes on to win. Luckily for Andy, though, Wayne had a bad bounce in the other lane, which really cost him. You see Nightlife just bouncing that front end like it had previously in its first round race, and it just ends up throwing the race away for Nightlife. Bigfoot going to go on to take on Taurus in the final round. And what we have right now is probably one of, if not the best PENDA Monster Truck race I think I've ever seen.
Oh, I'll agree with you. It's just funny to think how nobody is consistent at this event.
Yes, nobody's consistent at all at this event until we get to the final.
Yeah, till we get to the final. Here we go. Now it's going to prove itself. And yeah, you're right, man. It was a good one. I mean, to be expected. I mean, look at the names.
Exactly. Bigfoot and Taurus, number 4 in qualifying and number 2 in qualifying. Jackie's interviewed quickly right here. He says number 8 is the best Bigfoot. He's going to have to give it his best shot here in the finals. These two trucks were almost identical in round 2 time-wise. I mean, this final is a GMC and a Ford. They keep calling it a Chevrolet. Obviously, GMC is a Chevrolet product. I get it. They just want to go with that Ford-Chevy matchup right there. But, man, Bigfoot's in the lane it wants. Taurus is in the lane that it wants. And Army says probably the best quote that you could say before a race like this. The difference between men and boys is the price of their toys. And, of course, that leads into a Hot Wheels Tonka thing. But I love that. The difference between men and boys is the price of their toys, quote from Army right there, describing these guys. And, God, this race is just so phenomenal to me. Even watching it back and slowing it down, I slowed this down several times myself. I still cannot call a winner.
Yeah. Could it be reran?
So
yeah, it was worthy of one of those deals, but
super good race. It depends on where they're calling the finish line, because if you look at it, the Snoop nose on Taurus, which I think got him in a little bit of trouble every now and then because it was technically a longer truck. That's why they went to the front tire instead of the front of the body. But I think that's what gets them the win, and that's why they give it to him, because it does look like that the front of the Snoop nose on Taurus is what is across the line first.
Yeah, for sure. Man, every little bit counts.
Yes, they give the win to Taurus by 4 thousandths of a second, and man,
look at that.
That is one of the tightest races I think you could ever see.
Tight race, and then just look at who is up against one another, man. Big corporate team versus a father and son.
Yeah, versus a father and son operation, and they're within 45 minutes of each other too.
Yeah, just awesome.
Coolest angle that they show right here is of Jack Sr., and he's standing by a telephone pole, hunched over, watching the two cross the line, and he holds his hands up in the air and he claps like he kind of knows he won. But when you look at that replay, they slow it down. They show a frame by frame. I still can't call a winner of it, but they give, like I said, they give it to Taurus here. I got to be vindication from the day before when the tire went down. It almost appears like Taurus could have swept the weekend.
Yeah, I'm sure they're feeling that same confidence also. finally, the promoters are probably like, thank God we finally have a good race.
Yeah.
Something we were looking forward to every round. What we're trying to get, a fan base built up here, and they got it. And from here on out, it just got better over the years.
Army says, I've played this game a long time, gentlemen. That had to be the best monster truck race I've ever seen. Andy replies back to him. He says, that was a real close race and probably the hardest race that I've had to run. Taurus's new truck is hard to beat. I knew it was going to be close at the end. Army turns and looks at the camera and says, one of the questions that we had at the beginning of the show was, has the new technology arrived? And I think the answer is yes. They were both in the final today. I agree with Army there. The new technology has certainly arrived by this point. You see the wave of the future that we're about ready to go on in monster truck racing. I'm curious, though, Coty, what is your opinion on both of these events?
With what they're saying right there at the very end, they're just scratching the surface of what's to come for technology-wise, for the trucks, the components the guys are using.
And that's the best way they could have spun this episode, too. That is the best way they could have spun it. Because like you were saying earlier, they didn't really have that many races that went to the wire.
No, they didn't have many races that went to the wire like that. That was the best possible outcome. And, this event as a whole, looking back at it now, it was a stepping stone. They had to start somewhere with it. I'm trying to recall the guy's name who I think might have been there at the time. That would it have been family events then?
I don't think so. I don't remember exactly. I want to say it was just PENDA that was promoting this event. It was just probably PENDA. Special events.
Not that it makes a difference anyway, but
yeah,
they had something to work with here, and they had a big following, and it worked for several years to come. And
yes, it did. And honestly, I think this event is what pogoed them into becoming the fastest name in monster truck racing a few years later.
Yep. But on the same hand, man, it's like a catch-22 situation. It filtered a lot of good guys out. You look at John Moore. You look at Hess went on a little bit different route. He didn't really compete in the PENDA series not long after that, and then it just filters guys out, and which is not necessarily a bad thing. It just the industry kind of went two different ways, I guess. There was a couple more arena promoters going on, whereas PENDA just went on to be this bigger thing over the years.
Yeah, PENDA was a juggernaut.
Yes, it was. Good and bad situation.
But honestly, we see this all the time in other motorsports of different guys being not necessarily weeded out of the competition, but just they go to the wayside. It happens in NASCAR every few years. You see guys that, whatever happened to that guy or whatever happened to this guy? To me, it was Labonte brothers in NASCAR. I was like, whatever happened to them? Where'd they go? They just all of a sudden they weren't there.
It just takes a different path. The same way I'm a big drag car guy. You look how big drag racing is as a whole compared, there's so many organizations, there's so many classes, there's so many, everything from top tier funny car NHRA all the way down to this complicated X275 class in a series that only runs in Georgia. And it's like, man, it's hard to keep up. So not that monster trucks went that elaborate in their divisions or diversities or however you want to say it. This era was just the scratching the surface of what was to come.
Yeah, exactly. Scratch the surface of what was to come. I gave the event myself an 8 out of a 10, mainly because the production value of the event was second to none. I thought TNN did a great job. Other than misspelling Wayne Smozanik's name, they did extremely well on this entire event and this entire weekend. And like we were saying earlier, they spun this event and they actually spun both of these events into a giant positive on what could have been a giant negative by some of the racing standpoints. Because like I said, the racetrack was rough on these trucks, and we really only got one race that was worth the big price of admission on day number 2, and that's the Taurus Bigfoot final. That's still one of those races to this day you can show to anybody, and they're going to get hamped up to watching it.
Yeah. Had to have been some of the same production crew that were doing some of the drag race stuff back in the day, because it was all the same. The promo videos for the commercial stuff was always, shake, bell, and roll, and they walked away part 2 or whatever, and it was always the same. Call this number to get the same video. So it's the same.
And now for another exciting edition from Diamond P Sports.
Yeah, so the Diamond P guys, they had a niche for doing a great motorsport broadcast,
and they did exactly that.
One of many. Yes.
But hey, man, I really appreciate you coming on here. Is there anything that you'd like to plug on here for yourself going forward, or?
Oh yeah, sure, man. I mean, don't count me out. I'm not leaving the industry anytime soon.
Well,
I'm
I
certainly
actually, I
not
know I
leaving.
heard that you might have a new truck on the horizon. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, that was, as strangely enough, that could have turned around. It was a joke, but it could have turned around. It went off so well that
Mm-hmm.
I could have my own truck just because of a joke. People got
Yeah.
me. They took it so serious that
Oh, dude, you
people
got
were
Tyler.
willing.
You got Tyler Menigo with it. I know you did.
Oh, dude, I've got Kohler. He was
You got
willing to give me
Kohler.
some shock. He was willing to give me shock parts. So
That's
all
awesome.
good. But no, I do not have my own operation. It was only April Fools, but I'm not out of the count yet. There is 2 Monster Energy trucks in the Monster Jam program, myself and Todd LeDuc. So um, when that's going to be, I don't know. Does anybody know? No. Is it
Yeah.
that important? No. Just stay home, be healthy, and that's all you can ask for right now.
Yep, I agree with you 100%. Couldn't have said it any better myself. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank Coty very much for being on the show. This was a fun event. I really had a good conversation. I hope you did too, buddy.
Yes.
Gonna have you back on the show again soon. Like I said, there's another event out there on the horizon we were talking about before we started recording that I really kind of want to get you back on here for. Until next time, though, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you guys again on the tracks across America.